And we have the recording. Okay, so it's time for business. Good afternoon, everyone. Um, I'm so grateful to see you here during the summer. Um, this is one particular event that I look forward every week. So to be able to have people to talk is always fun. So yeah, I'm one of your officers, and beside Nancy, we're gonna try to coordinate this conversation so all of you can have a good experience while debating. Oh well, not debating, philosophizing about this new topic, which is gonna be physical feeling and emotional feeling. What's the connection? So there is that. But before we dig deeper into this communication, in this conversation, I just want to explain the house rules. First, please let me know if you have access to the chat because we use the chat basically for everything. If you are a little bit shy and you just want to type, that's fine. You can type your questions or your interventions there, and I will read them out loud so it's recorded and you can become famous on YouTube. There you go. That's one thing. But if you do want to speak, you need to type an exclamation mark, as I am doing right now. That way we can keep order or track of who is going to speak first, who's going to speak second, and whatnot. If you raise your hand virtually, I will see you, but I cannot really add you in the list because I don't know who did it first or last, or it's harder to see. This is very informal. Don't expect to know all the terminology. Just say it as it is in your mind. Do not worry, we're gonna get it, and it's gonna be even more fun that way. And yeah, normally Mance is the one who does the announcement, so I will let him do the announcement, and then we go into the conversation.
Hey, thank you, Fernando. Welcome to everybody who's present. Again, to second Fernando's sentiments here, it is summer, but you're here, so we're grateful. It's the summer of philosophy. Philosopher. That's what you are. When you philosophize in the summer, you're not a philosopher, you're a philosopher. All right. Osita, Lucas, feel free to unmute yourselves while you're laughing so that people know I'm funny. Not much by way of announcements, frankly. Again, it's the summer, so there's not a lot going on in terms of extracurricular activities other than our weekly meeting. I would encourage you to check us out on social media. Again, we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We have our own website, all that good stuff. And of course, we're on YouTube. Every meeting gets recorded and posted to YouTube. We've got over 100 videos up there spanning 5 years, something like that. Including our conferences, including our film nights. So a lot of good stuff. Check us out up there. Yeah, and having said that, I guess we could begin to transition into the topic here. Now, it is kind of a, I don't want to say a complicated topic, but I will say there's a lot of aspects to it. So we don't have to be comprehensive, of course, and we certainly don't have to be technical in our language. We could speak very informally and just try to sort of get at the heart of the experience of what we're talking about here. That was a pun. Heart. Here's why. Here's some questions that I think we could use to kick us off, but again, don't feel like beholden to these questions. And the reason why, I don't usually do this, but the reason why I'm reading out the questions off the bat is because, again, the topic is a bit of perhaps a strange one. So here we go. Again, as Fernando said at the top, it's physical feeling and emotional feeling. What's the connection? And so some questions are here, and this is taken right from our email. Why do we describe emotions using the language of tactile sensation rather than that of the other 4 senses? So whenever we talk about the emotions, we call them feelings. We don't call them visions or sounds. We call them feelings. You feel. That's one of the 5 senses, but it seems like the predominant one, maybe the exclusive one, when it comes to this sort of metaphor between actual physical tactile sensation and, on the other hand, feeling with your emotions, which again are intangible. So something else to consider. Again, we find these expressions in language like being touched or being moved, like, oh, that was so touching, or wow, you really moved me. Again, that implies physical force, physical connectedness, but we're using it to describe something that's not physical, namely, again, our emotions. Again, there's something ironic about having intangible ideas or emotions, and we call them feelings, when the term itself implies that you can feel it, implies that there's an object. Okay, so that's something we can consider. I don't think that it's accidental. I'll just throw that out there. I think there's a reason. There is a connection, in other words. And then I also wanted to highlight this as well. The link between the heart, so that's the pun I made earlier, as sort of the physical embodiment of what we refer to, or physical source of what we refer to when we talk about the emotions. So we talk about thoughts and ideas, you talk about the brain or the mind. But when you talk about feelings, you tend to talk about the heart. Now, again, the heart is tangible. It's something. It's physical. It's a thing. And just like any other thing, it responds to motions. It responds to movements. What's really fascinating is that the heart itself, physically, seems to have physical responses to non-physical things, such as emotions. And I wonder if, and I'd be happy to sort of, if we go down this road, get more detailed. But I wonder if the way that the heart itself physically responds to particular emotions isn't coincidental to what the emotions themselves are. All right, so there's a lot that we can sink our teeth into here. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. And of course, feel free to speak on any of that or something else that is related but not covered by me just now.
Nancy, I think your mic is muted.
Oh, give it back to me.
Yeah. Okay, so we have Luca. He is saying feelings are well, he's asking questions. One, feelings aren't objects, but we discuss them as things. Is this because we have physiological change with emotion? For instance, heart increases when we have anxiety. This is what I heard. This is what you heard? Like, I mean, haven't you experienced it? That's interesting. Are you a machine? um, I mean, I'm not sure, honestly. Why do we call them that thing? Um, I do know, however, that it is very interesting to me how emotions do focus in certain areas, and um, I mean, I think I don't remember how it is called, but there is like a Chinese thing that is like that you put some like needles in certain areas of your body, and that's supposed to like reduce certain tensions or emotions, like based on whatever is it that is located. So it seems that your body does have accumulation of certain emotion in specific points in your body that affects how you can feel. So that for me is like interesting. So I guess it kind of relates to what you are saying. John is saying that's why I'm on heart medication. Oof. That's yeah, that's very John-like comment. Um, okay. So, oh, by the way, welcome all of you who just joined, Gare and I think Daniel. Again, if you want to participate, do as Mansi said, did, sorry, in the chat, exclamation mark, and there you go. So, Mansi, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll respond to Luke again, Professor Ulrich here. Oh, I'm seeing John's comment. This time it's not hyperbolic. Well, we actually return to that question of medicine. I think that's an interesting avenue down which we can travel. But talking about Lucas's questions here, feelings aren't objects, but we discuss them as things. Yeah, that's kind of that. I think that does get at the gist of this topic here. Is that what is a feeling, and what's more, why do we call them feelings? Because when we talk about feeling in the literal sense, we're talking about touching an object. In order for the experience of physical feeling to happen, there needs to be another object that you're feeling. You can't just feel nothing. You need to feel something. And yet, again, when we talk about the emotions, we speak of them in the same exact way. You need to feel something about something. So you might even add an additional factor there. But then he goes on to ask, is this because we have physiological change with emotion? Yes, I believe that is. I don't think we can debate that. I think we certainly have physiological responses to emotions. I think we have emotional responses to physiological processes. Uh, but it does seem difficult to differentiate clearly one from the other. They do seem to be sort of indelibly intertwined. My question here is there an actual connection between specific physical or physiological responses to specific emotions in a way where it's almost rational or logical or non-coincidental? So, okay, let me elaborate just a little bit further here. I know we have so many people in the queue clamoring to speak on this, but I'm going to go and extend my speech here. We see this in language. So you might even say something like, when you feel good, you say, my heart soars. I know that might be kind of like old school or, old fashioned, but yeah, that is an expression. My heart is soaring. I wonder if when you feel that exhilaration, I wonder if your heart is actually raised. I wonder if there is a literal connection to what seems merely metaphorical. And if we can claim that there is that kind of connection, or when you say, okay, alternatively, if you say, oh, my heart sunk, do you think your heart actually does sink as a response to a sinking feeling? And that's why we call it that? Or is everything just totally arbitrary? I don't think
Well,
it is.
well, I don't think it's arbitrary. I think like I mean I believe in this case if we use the words, we're using our emotions since we cannot see them. We describe them as objects that are in our environment as the most familiar thing that we can find. So in this case, if you're thinking like like I imagine that if you see an object that is like heavily like going down, and it's like okay, that's something I don't know. It's like a visual connection with something that you cannot see, but it feels like it is. So that's I feel like those type of descriptions when it comes to emotional responses will vary according to the language or the culture you are in. Because I mean, for example, like there are some countries who are less expressive than others, so it's very much like ding ding, is this, but others are very creative in how they describe their emotions. Um, and I remember that you were saying something, and I'm forgetting it. Ah, well, yeah, anyways, I know it's related to the environment because yeah, like I do think there is a connection. However, I want to also explore how is it that some people will have the effect in lesser or higher than others. For instance, when somebody is extremely nervous, maybe some even start like breathing, like they cannot even breathe, and they have to like you have to like take them aside and let them cool down. While others, even though they could be extremely nervous, they're able to experience a less physiological response to their emotions. So, like, what is it that a person makes them more vulnerable to be so overwhelmed by their emotions that it stop them to work properly, physically speaking? So that's a question that I have there. I do know that Luca was the next in the queue, so I'm gonna let him take it out. But he's mentioning something about cool down. It's literally cooling down as heart beats more, making us more hot. So yeah.
If I just interject, I mean, you're making some great points here. And I just want to say, it kind of does tie back what you're saying to what John Floyd was saying earlier about medicine. I mean, it does seem like we could feel physically our heart beating faster when we're experiencing anxiety. And that seems to be a universal feature among those who experience anxiety. But when we talk about things like mind over matter, it does kind of seem like what we're trying to do is control our body in spite of our body's natural response to emotions. And then perhaps when people sometimes take medication to help them behave in a way that they'd rather behave otherwise, you have to remember the medication, it's just chemicals. It's changing how your body reacts to your emotions. That's what's happening. And it's resulting somehow in more manageable emotions because perhaps the emotions themselves kind of spike because of the natural bodily impulse, which
Yeah,
chemicals may, take care of, not take care
yeah.
of, but, settle.
And I want to throw something else before Luca start like speaking. But there is also this component that sometimes you can go inverse. Instead of like your emotion changing your body, you can have your body changing your emotions. You can actually force yourself to have some feelings, and that's something that actors use so they can force their emotions whenever they're like, I need to cry, so they force themselves to be sad. They're not sad in that moment, but they know how to do it, and that's like a physiological response that they force into their emotions or whatever. So like the other ways around. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, but okay, look at your next.
I first of all, I love this topic because it kind of pushes my language in a way where I don't know what to say. Because on the one hand, when I picture my experience of emotion, it's almost like a weather which I'm inside, almost as if it's outside of me, and I am interacting with this bubble that my body kind of blew up, which is an environment like of my nervous system which surrounds me. On the other hand, it also seems right that it is my response to my body doing something, and it's almost like an after expression. So I have these two conflicting ways of thinking about that experience, and I don't really know how to put them together. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, it might be because, oh, Ferdy, you're muted. It might be because, we're making these distinctions when they aren't really there. Maybe there is more of a symbiotic relationship than, sort of one, we're trying to talk in terms of like a causal mechanism or like trying to put them together temporally, but maybe they happen simultaneously.
Yeah, I was just saying that maybe Luca needs to be more in touch with his emotions so he can know better how to like.
Oh,
Absolutely.
by the way, I did want to also, I remembered one more thing I was going to say is a lot of times people, if you talk to them about emotions, they'll say things like, "Oh, well, I'm not very emotional," or I don't feel a lot." But I think that that is an emotion. Like neutrality is an emotion. We might not have very good words to describe it, but it's a state which is reached through, well, we have enough food and we have enough water, we have shelter, we're not afraid, we have enough protection around us, and it's not easy to obtain the neutral state. So even when we're talking about emotion, I think we also have to add in what we consider to be a neutral, non-emotional state as an emotion.
Yeah, I mean, part of the motivation behind this topic was that we were exploring the idea of what it is to live without any feelings, like how your perception about the environment will change if you have no feelings at all. Now, remember that I was talking to Mansis. I said, like, I mean, imagine you as a baby and you don't have any feeling. Like, what is your motivation to cry if you don't even feel like it? Like, could you even survive if you don't like if you have zero feelings? Because again, like zero feeling will be like, for example, like yeah, like motivation, yes, like I don't know, desire for something. If you have nothing, or that you have somebody who is playing and actually, to some degree, is completely different from the norm that we see because he's not bounded by like those things that move us. He just do whatever because it doesn't matter. And like it literally doesn't matter to him whether he, I don't know, dies or not. So it is a whole concept that, at least in my mind, I'm very curious about what life could be that way. Um, but I know that there's some people who claim not to have any emotions, but I feel like it's not necessarily true. I feel like they train themselves to like as a defensive mechanism to not be overwhelmed by the emotions. Um, that's what I feel. But okay, I see you Chase next, and then John is next.
Hey, great discussion, guys. I'm sorry for the background noise. I'm on the road. I've been all over Dallas today. But today's topic is actually very personal because I'm the guy that you, Ferdinando, and Ulrich have been referring to of claiming not having emotions, right? So I'll come to that in a bit. But first thing that I want to address is Manzi's point. I'm sorry I couldn't hear everything that was before. But coming to Manzi's point where he said that the expressions that my heart is sinking and stuff like that, or like my heart is in my throat, right, and stuff like that. So those expressions are actually not just expressions. That is a physical experience that you're experiencing, because there was a study done about these where subjects were what's it called, experimented on, and they were put through a lot of tests and trials, right? So the expression that we get, cold feet, which is another expression for fear, is actually true. You do lose blood circulation in your feet when you are experiencing fear. So physically speaking, yes, the chemicals that we have in our brain and that surge through our body when we're experiencing stuff like that, those are, as a matter of fact, physical. It's not just an expression to kind of explain something unexplainable. But that's one thing that I wanted to point out, that yes, those things are actually happening to your body, and it's not made up or anything like that. Second thing, if you ask me, I guess it's person to person, it might vary. But if you ask me, life is very easy, because living or controlling your emotions, because you can never truly live without 100% emotion. Like I still feel anger, right? And other emotions not so much. So like love. And I was talking to my mom the other day, and I was asking her, when I was preparing for this topic, I was asking her that, hey mom, as a baby, did I ever cry, or any like spontaneous laughing or anything like that? And she said no. I was just blank, pretty straightforward. When someone comes and talks to me about any kind of emotion, love, fear, anxiety, anything like that, I cannot relate to them. Why? Because I guess it's just in tuned to me that it's not worth my time. Basically, that's what I think right now. That emotions are, as a matter of fact, a waste of time, because they cloud your judgment. They make you do things that you regret later, so on and so forth. But for me, personally speaking, life could not be better, because I don't. Um, a lot of people in my friend group are like, oh, I have a crush on this person, I'm getting nervous when they're around, and I'm getting all sweaty, I don't know how to talk to them, blah blah blah. They're making up all these stories, and weird things happen. But for me, it's not that, because that part, or that thing, that says that, oh, you might like that person, or you might have a crush on them, or anything like that, is just not in me. Same thing with fear. I rarely ever fear anything. The only thing that does trigger me is anger, and I am very, what's it called? We call it having a short fuse, back where I'm from. So I'm sorry, Texas driving. But in a matter of speaking, I do have a very short fuse. It is very easy to agitate me. It is very easy to make me angry and aggressive. But other emotions and feelings, I just don't have those.
Okay. Um, well, okay, but this is the thing. I do feel like you have them, but maybe you experience it in a way that you don't feel connected with other people. But like I remember that you there was a time when you said that the feelings that you had for like some family members you have were not at all the same as you had for like a cat. So like you do experience like it's just like I
Oh no,
I
yeah,
mean
I understand what you're saying. That was exactly my opening statement. It's just I don't feel them at the level that other people do necessarily, or exactly the same even throughout. But I'm not saying that, oh, they're completely non-existent. It's a very minuscule level. Like, of course, I have love and affection for my parents and siblings, but when you say that, okay, I feel empathy or sympathy for someone else, that is just not there, because in even in my work field, I work at a law office, and we do immigration stuff, right? So for asylum cases, I have to watch videos, photos, very graphic and gruesome content, where a normal person would just quit within a month. And I have had interns quit within 24 hours of the of experiencing the stuff that I have to. I guess it just goes hand in hand with my quote unquote defense mechanism, if you want to call it that, because emotionally I've warded myself from being hurt. I guess if you want to put it that way, in psychological terms or whatever. But yes, I agree with you. It is false to claim that, oh, I have zero emotions whatsoever, because everyone experiences them at one point or another, and also it goes because of your sense of what's it called, self-preservation. You inherently love yourself, not to put yourself in situations where you could end up dead.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but I do want to clarify that the example I was trying to portray, which was the motivation of this topic, was to have zero emotions, like none. Like you simply cannot feel nothing. And the other idea was like to actually to have no senses. Like if you cannot like actually feel, so like how can you describe your emotions? And if you cannot describe your emotions, I mean, how aware can you be of how you are feeling? Because maybe you like you're aware that something happening, but since your senses are failing, you cannot describe them. And it's kind of like the whole notion of how can you think without words, kind of a deal. But well, I know that John is next. He has been for a while that he's next, so your floor.
So as I recall, and tell me if I'm remembering this wrong because it's been a minute, the way you were describing actors portraying
Yes.
emotion was the word force.
Yes.
That's what I
Okay.
took umbrage with, because one of the biggest thing that they teach actors, whether it's method acting or any of the other schools of acting, if you will, is to be in the moment. And if you're in the moment, you experience things real time. So I don't have to draw on, oh gosh, I'm going to have to make this emotion. So I'm going to think about a bunch of sad little puppies, or I'm going to. One of the things that I had a director comment on years ago was why I was stopping myself from continuing to cry in a scene, and then I had to explain that if I kept going, I wouldn't be able to stop. Because when you're in the moment, it's a connective tissue that sometimes is difficult to disconnect. So it's peeking down the rabbit hole instead of falling in it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
But
I
I didn't
remember an
have to draw
example.
on anything except being in the moment with the person I was in the scene with.
Yeah, I remember an example that there was it was in the movie Social Media or something like that, the one on Facebook. The guy who did at some point Spider-Man, like he needed to act like in anger, and apparently after the scene ended, it took him like an hour. Like people actually have to like go and sit with him and like calm him down because he was like out of his mind, through anger. So I mean, he opened a door there, and he wasn't even to control himself to like stop feeling that emotion. But okay,
So
so
to your point, does that make it manufactured? Does that make it false? Does that mean I'm not experiencing that? Does it genuinely mean that my character is the only one experiencing that? It's an awfully deep hole to dig through, but something to consider potentially, especially if Manzi's nodding.
But I mean, I think like maybe at first it is, but once you feel it, I mean, you're feeling it. You cannot just say you're faking it. But okay, go ahead, Nancy.
I was actually nodding to myself, confirming my Uber Eats order. What were you saying, John? No.
I was on mute. It doesn't matter.
And yeah, and John is a very skilled actor, so he knows this far better than I, what goes on there. Although, it's worth mentioning that Aristotle famously said that actors are the greatest liars. But given the examples y'all are coming up with, perhaps there is some authenticity to their lying. At any rate, I wanted to back up a little bit and talk about something Fernando and Luke were talking about, which is, again, this idea of and Yusha, of numbness. So again, getting back to the original question here, is there more than just a metaphorical connection between physical sensation, tactile sensation, feeling, and of course what we refer to as the intangible feelings? And it does seem like, well, if you want to, as Lucas was saying, if you want to call numbness a valid emotional feeling, I'm not so sure it has a correspondence in the physical. Because it would seem as though numbness is simply the absence of the sensation of feeling. So it can't be, there is no physical sensation that comes from a lack of physical sensation. So I wonder, Luke, why you think that that's not the case with the emotions.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. I guess I don't think of it as numbness. I think of it as, well, I'm still seeing the world. Maybe, let's say I ate too much and I'm tired. Well, now my emotion's tired. But if I eat the right amount, drink the right amount, I'm not tired. There's a neutral state, but my body's functioning at a very high level and everything is processing and working correctly. So I don't know if I think numbness I would probably categorize as uh, almost a retreat, usually a purposeful retreat from my emotions, where my body brings about numbness. But it's strange because when I think about emotions, I don't know if there could ever be such a thing as a non-emotional state. I guess the way that I categorize it, every experience we have is inside of an emotional state. It's just some of them we think of them as neutral.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good response. Thank you. And that, I would agree with that, because maybe this sort of numbness, you might want to call it just being content, but I think really what it is routine. It's when you've maybe a routine of your choice where one sort of has conditioned or habituated or trained oneself, and perhaps this goes back to Yusha's point, to have certain responses to certain stimuli in the world that would trigger emotions. So the numbness might be something that is considered maybe emotional maturity, where it's you're still feeling emotions, but they're not consuming. They're not. I suppose getting back to Yusha's point, they're not causing you to behave erratically, but you're still inhabiting them in that kind of Heideggerian way.
Okay. But I do want to add something else based on what Luca was saying, because I do believe that there is a moment that if you feel too repetitively, consecutively, or whatever it is that is pronounced in English, very intense emotions, like you can actually like not stop feeling it, but like you do become numb. Like I remember that when I was younger, I was more exposed to like violence in like in TV or whatever. Like I was more exposed, and I had the opportunity to actually see something violent in front of me, and it didn't affect me as other people who were like extremely shocked. Now I remember that there was a moment that I saw like I don't understand why it's not affecting me. Like I know I should, like logically speaking, like I feel like reasonable, I should be feeling something, but I wasn't. And like interestingly enough, when I reduced my exposure to those kind of things, and then I was exposed to a certain degree of violence, it affected me more than before. So it was kind of like there was a specific type of emotion that was kind of like um, I don't know if numb is the right approach, but like let's say for example when somebody is like eh, um, letting you down constantly, like there is some point that you don't like you stop caring as much as before. It's like you know what, like F, like I don't know how to explain it. So like I
Yeah,
do
no,
feel like
well, I think I have a good analogy because I like what you're saying. Again, trying to make these connections between the physical and the emotional. It's almost like, again, if you're growing up with maybe older brothers or something, and I didn't experience this, but I witnessed this happening to my friends who had older brothers. Um, their older brothers would kind of like get them to flinch. So they'd come up and they'd kind of go like that to get them to flinch. And then after a while, you train yourself to not give into that natural bodily reaction. So when somebody does this, you just don't move. Well, maybe that happens with the emotions too. If you've experienced it again routinely, repetitively, maybe it's not that you're unemotional, but you understand it in such a way where you sort of have more of a control of your emotional response.
Yeah,
yeah.
have you ever watched that movie, which was so good you just wish you could go back and watch it again for the first time? But it's never as good the second time, But that first time that you see it, it's like, man, I wish I could see it again for that first time.
Yeah, or a song. Whenever like there is a song that connects with you like instantly, and you just hear it like 100 times for like in 10 minutes. And then you never have that rush, but it's there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
this is neither here nor there, but it always struck me as funny. Talking about there's a genre of music called emo, which means emotional. And oftentimes when you listen to the songs of that genre, it's very emotional performances about how the songwriter cannot feel emotion. Kind of, uh, but I wanted to talk about another topic that came up in the queue. Uh,
should I
yeah,
read the cue? You need me to
yeah,
read the cue? Okay, so John is saying your body rushes blood to your core as a protective mechanism when you're experiencing fear. So to Yusha's point, you have cold feet. Then Daniel says your brain registers the emotional pain of heartbreak in the same way as physical pain, which is why you might feel like your heartbreak is causing actual physical hurt. And at least elephants die from broke heart. Saying. Define irony. That's for John comment. Talking about a short fuse while in traffic honking your horn. That's on Yusha. You shall then say, be right back. If there's any question, please chat and I will respond when I can. And John again say, define working correctly. Same with drugs. All right. We're, we're caught up. You can continue, man.
yeah. I wanted to respond first to that. The brain registers the emotional pain of heartbreak in the same way as physical pain. That's really fascinating. I would love to read some more sources on that. But the reason I bring this up is because, or why I want to focus on this, because there is some sort of medical diagnosis, quasi-medical diagnosis. I remember stumbling upon it a long time ago. I just brought it back up again. It's called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, and it means broken heart syndrome. It's the weakening of, so here's the physical. It's the weakening of the left ventricle, usually over, again, due to stress. Typically, again, you would think physical stress against the left ventricle. But the diagnosis here is that, well, no, your heart breaks due to emotional stress that somehow puts pressure, again, in this case, on the left ventricle. So there are these, medical, again, people challenge I guess the credibility of this kind of diagnosis, but it's out there. So I do think that this connection between the physical and the emotional is real and even currently being diagnosed. Yeah, there's a show a long time ago called Entourage where there was a plot line where one of the characters suffers from this. That's fine. Having said that, I do want to get back to this idea of acting. As John was talking about, and then I'll turn it over to the rest of y'all. But again, John, you were picking on these terms like force and you used the term manufacture, and I think that's really intriguing because it does seem as though the connection we're describing between the physical and the emotional, they seem to be spontaneous. It seems to be like a natural, spontaneous connection. But there are ways of eliciting emotional responses based upon how you treat the body. So for example, I mean, if you don't, maybe you miss lunch or something like that, by the end of the day, you get hangry. And that's just, the emotions are coming from the physical, the lack of nutrients. Similarly, I think it was Joey from Friends, who was an actor, and he said, I can't make myself cry, so I just prick myself with the
Yeah.
That's manufactured, it seems to me. Because you're eliciting the physical expression that would suggest an emotion that isn't actually being felt. I think that gets back to the Aristotle lying part of it. But I do wonder, and this is where I'm taking all this, again, building on John's question, how can one come to know what is a true emotion versus an emotion one's feeling because of a physical response? So it's like, I'm not really mad at you, I'm just hungry. Or I'm not really sad, I'm just off my medication. I mean, is there a way to then distinguish or differentiate between these sort of naturally, I suppose, emerging emotions based on physical stimuli versus the kind of emotion maybe you want to manufacture. I don't want to be scared every time I see, I don't know, I look out the window on the 4th floor. Like I want to be able to, so I'm wondering where the authenticity lies now that we've sort of dug ourselves a hole here. All right, thanks.
Did we dug a hole? Jesus. Okay, let's go with that. Um, the other part before I pass it on to you, Sha, because okay, so I know that there are some cultures when they focus heavily in training to be emotionally like capable, kind of like be highlighted, like enlightened. Sorry. So kind of like their emotions are something that they control completely, and they are just in calm with whatever it is that the environment throw at them. So is there is there like a possibility that they are able to adjust, for example, where an emotion affects a specific body? Like for example, whenever you're in love or whatever, like your heart start racing. Like instead of like having in your heart, can you like train it to be in a different spot? I don't know. I'm just kind of curious. Um, like like maybe in your left arm. So like, do you have to be in a specific position? Um,
That's
I don't know.
interesting. I think there's something, I think yoga actually speaks on that.
Yeah, whenever you start like breathing and kind of like imagine that you're moving it, but still, um, I mean, would moving it to a different position would affect? I mean, I'm just questioning. Would affect your response to specific emotions? I don't know. But I mean, this is too abstract to like tackle in 13 minutes. So,
That's
Yusha,
not
you're next.
necessarily as abstract as it sounds.
Okay, so good. I mean, we can talk it right now. I don't care. And for me, I'm just into like exploring ideas all the time.
Well,
Um,
have you ever started to cry and try in an effort to stop yourself? You feel it somewhere else?
I haven't. I don't know. I haven't done that. Like, whenever I'm feeling, I'm not trying to feel it somewhere else. I just feel, and that's it.
I've done
Um,
that with physical pain. Like if I sprained my ankle or something, it was really hurting. Yeah, a friend would come by and like
punch
hit
you
me
in the arm.
that arm, yeah, to
Yeah,
distract.
I have done that, but I
Yeah.
mean, is it really the same? I mean, but I mean, it's a very good analogy though. Can you really do well? I guess yes. For example, whenever you're like being comforted by a friend that you're sad and he's making you laugh, so you feel a little bit less sadness because you at the same time you're experiencing other emotions. I mean, it's not completely what I was saying, but it does relate. And if you're able to apply that like individually, I guess it could be a good practice. Um, but okay, I mean, it's good. It's good for now. Yusha, you're next, and then I have to read a couple of comments.
Great. Yes, Professor Manji, I was actually going to come to the article that you were mentioning about straining heart and whatnot. It is actually the strain or the stress that is caused to the left ventricle is because there are inside your heart, there are these tiny string-like muscles that are responsible for compressing and then releasing each ventricle because the heart has 4 sections, right? And those tiny strings break due to heartbreak, and that is what causes the pain and the depression and everything that follows heartbreak. So that being said, that is the physical aspect of. Just a minute.
Well, can I say, is that where we get the term pulling on your heartstrings from? Because you have
Yeah.
heartstrings? Really? That's interesting. I never knew that.
I'm sorry. I don't sorry to interrupt. I put a
I'm sorry.
image in the chat so you can see it about that. Maybe.
Yes, that's exactly where the I guess expression comes from. But if I'm not mistaken, the expression is older than this study, so I don't know if it's just piggybacking off of it or is it true to that. But one thing that I do know of is you can actually relieve or give yourself the assumption of relieving physical pain by distracting yourself. Like I used to watch Mythbusters when I was growing up, and I've literally watched every episode. So in one of the episodes, they were busting a myth where cursing reduces physical pain. And according to the feedback from the people that they were testing on, it's true that if you're hurt and you start cursing, it does reduce physical pain. So the the aspect of physical pain and kind of distracting yourself from it, whether it's verbally or maybe getting involved into something else, like when I stub my toe or when I fall off the stairs or something like that, I just start hopping or limping or something like that to distract myself from the pain, and I guess you can blame your body chemicals and hormones for that, uh, because in some people that the sense of pain is not very evident. They can go days without even realizing that they have a fractured bone or something like that, uh, which medically complicates things. But it is again a medical condition. So yeah, that's another thing that I wanted to touch up on.
Okay, good stuff. Um, all right. So, okay, I'll continue with the queue since I see Dosita wants to say something. Daniel says that is what Mansi is talking about. The heart can literally expand and break. And then John was like, and scene. Okay, so Sita, you're next.
Hi, yeah. Actually just forgot what I wanted to say, but I will say this. What Yusha was just talking about, oh God, about how when you cuss, you can take pain easier. That's sort of true with like a lot of things. There's another study done about like if you're working out and you talk positively to yourself, you can go further. So if you're running and you think like, oh, I can't do it anymore, if you start saying out loud, you can do it. Just 10 more miles or whatever, just 5 more minutes, whatever. Like a coach would do, like a personal trainer would do. Like there's a statistical significance that you'll actually uh, achieve more than you thought you would, or more than you think you can. Like you can run further, or you can do more reps, or whatever it is. Um, but yeah, it seems to me like emotion just seems to be like well, so like it's I don't know if misnomer is the right term, or it's just incorrect that we have five senses. That's just one of those things that like has kind of stuck around, but it's not really true, and it just seems like emotion um is another sense. We're taking external stimuli and it's causing like an internal reaction, an internal physiological reaction. And it is something that's necessary to interact with the world around us, at least socially, which is necessary as like social creatures, to interact with the world around us. But it's one of those curious things where it does have to be controlled. I mean, just like a body, you can't just like live and not work on your body at all. You can't just live and not like try to like learn things or not work out or do any physical activity or whatever. Like it doesn't work that way. So like we're born with emotions, but it would benefit us to, I don't want to say control in the sense that we dampen them or suppress them, but control in the sense that we utilize them effectively. When people say like, oh, the idea of like becoming in tune with your emotions or knowing your body, I guess to the point of like, oh, being hangry, you should know, like you would be, it would be unfortunate. You would be, I think, it would be you would be not as developed, I guess. I don't know how to put this properly. If you were like an adult and you didn't like know that if I get hungry, I get angry. If you can't put those together, you're not going to I don't know how to say. You're not going to live as effectively as you could. If you're like going around being angry at people, and you don't realize why. You're not in tune with like your emotions. You know, you're not going to have like a great life if you can't understand why you feel the ways that you feel. And there's also a benefit. I mean, like Fernando was saying, like, you know, there's a benefit to not having emotion or to keeping your emotions in check. There are certain things that humans have to do. If you're a doctor, if you are a warrior, if you are something like this, where you have to like be stoic, you have to keep your emotions in check. It's not necessarily a bad thing in those senses, because being over emotional would not be beneficial if you're, you know, on the battlefield or something like that, or if you're having to make life and death decisions or something like that. Sometimes emotion is good, but sometimes it's not. And at the same time, being over emotional also just isn't. You lack logic if you just go all in on emotion, and that's, I think, the possible drawbacks of going zero logic and 100% emotion. I think should be obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's pretty much it. I thought it was very.
I stopped hearing him, but yes, good stuff. Yes, the thing is, like, for me, I feel like it will be better if we're able to identify
I don't
as.
know.
Oh, okay, now I can hear you. Was it me that was having an internet issue? No?
I think it was
Okay.
me. I think it was me.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Yeah.
I cannot hear him.
I look at this usually, but it was like I'm on this. Can you hear me? Can anyone?
In and out.
Okay.
In and out.
All right. I don't know. Then maybe I'll.
I like
Okay.
I like though, Asita. It sounded like Asita was basically saying.
Okay, I don't know. I think my network is messing up, so I'll stop talking. Anyway, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the effort. I mean, and you know, we did hear a lot of what you said, and again, great points. So it sounds like maybe you're getting at this idea of like channeling your emotion. So I mean, you know, instead of it being high stakes, like you're about to conduct open heart surgery or something like that, getting back to the heart examples, maybe just like, you know, bases loaded, bottom of the ninth, 2 outs on your softball team. You know what I'm saying? Like you still feel you still feel the emotions, but you're able to sort of like put them into context in a way where it's like you don't let them guide you, but you do allow them to sort of accentuate the situation you find yourself in. Yeah, I wanted to. I'm sorry, what's that?
No, I wanted to add a little bit more. Because I do agree, because I feel like we have to train ourselves to identify our emotions, because I don't think that there is any emotion that is entirely wrong or right. So like sometimes like you can be angry, but it is good to know that you're angry, because you know that you have to do something. Like emotions tell you that there is an action that is needed to do, so you can stop having that emotion. So like if you train yourself well enough, like you can just have the recognize it, and without letting it overwhelm, you can take actions. So I think like that's what most like leaders and whatnot like train themselves to do. Like you know that they listen to a story or something, and they all have emotions all the time, but they're able to not let that go too much into their head, and they use that to like make the proper decision whenever it's needed. Um, so that's what I wanted to add. Um,
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I like that you took it towards, you know, the sort of leadership idea. It's like sometimes getting back to this notion of feeling, and you know, love is a powerful feeling. Sometimes if you feel like you're part of something bigger than just yourself, that allows you to, again, lead in a way or help in a way that I suppose it transforms your emotions from an impediment to maybe a springboard without consuming you. we're coming up on time here. I did want to bring up something else. So in trying to sort of establish or question, consider the connection between the physical and the emotional here, I do want to challenge that a little bit. So let's say, for example, I don't know, you're born with all five senses, and then something tragic happens where you lose nerve ending sensations. And again, this is obviously just a extreme example, but trying to, for the sake of argument, you're no longer literally able to feel or touch anything anymore. But of course, you still feel emotions. Now, is that because you originally physically felt stuff, and that's why you're able to feel emotions even after you lose the tactile sensation ability? Or maybe another way to put it might be this. Do you think if you're born without the ability to receive physical sensation via touch, that you will not be able to experience emotions?
Well, I'm not completely sure about the last part. I do know this, that depending on how you are sensing, you do have a change in how you feel some things. I remember, and if somebody has more knowledge in this regard, you feel free to correct me. Nietzsche, he felt like his writing changed completely when he started having issues like, oh Jesus, I have that into the bed. Okay, that's fine. I don't know that that's weird. Like I remember that he felt like that his style of writing philosophy changed when he like instead of like using the pen, it was like typing because he felt like it was more robotic. It was less expressive, and I think he was also having issues like with her eyesight. So he felt like he lose a part of what made him write as other people wanted him to write or something like that. I don't remember the whole story, but it's in that regard. So if that happens when he started even changing like the instrument he was typing, like I feel like it does change if you have some loss of sight because the emotions kind of like express themselves in a different area or in a different form.
Yeah, no, I think I like that example. I think there is something to that. And it does go back to this, I guess, truth that you learn when you practice yoga. It's like your physical positioning is a direct or will directly result in sort of your emotional experience. But okay, let me try putting it in really extreme terms here. What do you think? I mean, we talk about hyperbole at the beginning. Let's get really hyperbolic. What do you think hurts the most? The most intense physical pain or the most intense emotional pain? And the reason I bring this up, we don't have to get specific, but the reason I bring this up is because during the course of our conversation today, it seems like it might be easy to conclude that, oh, emotions are just like a more refined result of our physical experience. And emotions are actually like a deeper, more, I suppose, as I said before, mature or evolutionary sort of result. But again, I mean, animals experience emotions, irrational animals. So I'm not so sure that emotions necessarily come after physical sensation. I think they're always like a helix. They're always sort of, again, intertwined. So when asking a question like, what do you think hurts more, the most extreme physical pain or the most extreme emotional pain? Is that even a fair question?
Well, I'm not completely sure, but I will say this. I would rather have a stronger physical pain than emotional because at least in our culture we have been more carefully to train the physical pain than the emotional pain. So it's easier to like fix that damage instead of the emotional because the emotional sometimes even like dismiss or they just throw a pill at you like take this and it's just like you just get like and it still have like a physical effect in you. But I'm
There's
thinking more of the consequences than the actual pain.
That's if I can jump in, that's sort of what I was gonna say. Where like I can just take opiates for physical pain, and most likely, I could maybe take a dissociative for emotional pain, but I don't know if that's a a better a better state of mind. I will say, like, most likely emotional pain will last longer, and it might have more. This is all very general and hypothetical, but just thinking about emotional pain, it'll probably last longer and it'll probably have a greater effect on your quality of life than some really bad physical pain. If you're stabbed, one day or something, that's going to suck for a while. But if you go through some terrible, your wife cheats on you, something horrible that's really going to just destroy you emotionally, I would rather have momentary physical pain that maybe lasts a week or two, and I can take some drugs and I'll be fine. And there's nothing. I look back on it and it's like, oh yeah, that sucks, but whatever. But if I have emotional pain, we all have gone through stuff that we still, for me, personally, 5 years ago, something terrible happened, and it's like, oh, it still sucks, and it's not. There's nothing I can really take. I can drink some scotch, or it doesn't make it go away. It doesn't. Yeah. So that's just me personally.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And the thing is, like, as you said, like some people experience that when they're like babies, and even when they're adult, they're still lingering through that emotional pain. So yeah, like I rather physical pain a lot more. But well, at least in the society we are right now, maybe eventually we grow so much that we have also the cure of emotional things like, ding, take this like twice a day and you will find. But okay, I'm gonna read the queue. We have John saying, "Oh, could those people be trying to be over emotional for the desired effect?" Maybe it's a good question. Really enjoy the discussion. This is Luca. Maybe the issue is we think body and emotion are separate, like body and soul. In the end, maybe we're just one thing, a functioning emotional body. Training our emotions will be like a Escher drawing. See you all next week. That's good. Now we have Sarosh, then
I agree with
Yusha.
that.
Yes. But I'm gonna continue reading the John, and then both of you can just take the floor. And then John said liability or asset. Beethoven's music changed significantly when he went deaf. And then what if I'm heard differently? So saying one hurts more than the other becomes subjective. Okay. So Sarosh, I'm sorry if I pronouncing butchering your name, and then Yusha. I cannot hear Sarosh. Okay, or I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Going once, going twice. Uh, okay, he texted something. Let's see what he texted. I'm having technical difficulties. Sorry about that. It's fine. So usually you can go first and then he goes after if he can speak. Otherwise, you can just type your answer and I will read it. That's also a possibility.
Great. Yeah. Great. Again, it's very fascinating because, see, as just like anyone else or others that have contributed, I would pick physical pain because one, there's a remedy to it, and two, it is for a short amount of time, right? So that being said, emotional pain would be considered more, I guess, because you cannot necessarily treat it and you cannot necessarily ignore it either. Like me specifically speaking, not a lot phases me. I can go through the worst of worst emotional situations, like deaths in the family and friends dying. I've lost friends to suicide, and not even a single tear was shed or anything like that. But that's something else, and you just learn to control it, I guess, if you want to put it that way, because See, as growing up, we were always taught to not make decisions emotionally. So a lot of the things that I don't feel today or necessarily don't have the capacity to feel can be put upon that hey, I never learned because I don't make decisions emotionally. So I guess I never learned how to experience them, if you want to put it that way. But one thing that actually three things that I do want to bring the conversation to is uh, we've discussed we've discussed the good and the normalcy of it, right? But what about conditions where yes, Osita, I am. But what about conditions like alexithymia or what's the other suppression of emotion or detachment from emotion? Because these conditions are also an aspect of a human experiencing emotions and not necessarily in a very good way. So what happens then? Because at that point, you would, I guess, because in alexithymia, you specifically suppress and try to ignore all that happened. And why I bring it up is because one of my clients, um, he was pretty brutally tortured, and after that he's just like a robot. He'll give you a logical answer, or he'll give you something from his experience that he knows is going to please someone, but he himself seeking pleasure out of that answer or out of that activity or anything like that is just not there. So mentally speaking and emotionally speaking, he put up a lot of these blockades um that kind of limit him from what he feels or what he's capable of experiencing. So what about people in those situations? Do they still consider pain, like general understanding of pain, as pain, or do they have their own understanding of it?
Yeah, very good questions. I mean, since we're over time, I'm not completely sure if I'm gonna spend right away. I want to. Oh, wait. Actually, this guy who was supposed to speak, he just left. That's interesting.
No, yeah, I
He-
reached out. There was technical difficulties, but uh, but yeah, maybe next time.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, Osita is asking Yusha. Okay, well, he did say the whole, like, if you are really into Stoic philosopher, which you already addressed, but he was saying, was he normal before torture? And you just replied yes. Okay.
Can I ask real fast, Yusha, do you think that you gotten some of your
Mm.
mannerisms from Stoic philosophers, or are you sort of interested in them because they sort of match maybe the way you approach the world?
Um, I only recently got into Stoic philosophy, like even long after Menzies class, because I was still into ethics at that point. I am still until today, but Stoicism is a whole new chapter, and I'm into it because I can personally relate to everything not everything, but a very large portion of what is being taught. And yes, I would say that I have an inclination because you are more inclined towards things that you're familiar with, right? And it's going to take you longer to understand something that is further away from you. Like all this, see, it's difficult to explain. So um, when my sisters, right? They're super emotional, both my sisters, and they love rom-coms and all that kind of stuff. And when I watch it with them, they don't even want to have me in the same room as them because I get technical, I get nitpicky, right? I tell them that okay, out of all the airports in the world, these two people happen to be in the same airport, not once, not twice, but four times or something like that. It just doesn't make sense to me. I am super analytical, and if it doesn't make sense to me in a physical manner, I don't comprehend it.
Can you see, are you happy, I guess, with your, I guess, relative lack of emotion? Or do you think that it would be more useful if you were slightly more emotional. So I don't mean to make this like a Yusha
It
psychology
normally
thing.
comes up whenever this happens. I guess I
Yeah,
will add a little bit to this conversation, which is, do you believe that Yusha would stop being Yusha if he has a little bit more emotions?
Listen, let me just say this. Yusha is emotional. Okay? Like, Yusha experiences emotions. I've seen him experience a range of emotions. So I
Yes.
don't know, Yusha, you are emotional. It's just a matter of, I just think you don't always approve of your emotions. I think that's where the difficulty lies.
No, yeah, as I mentioned when I first spoke when I was driving, I do experience emotions. It's just not like everyone else. I don't know how else to put it. It's not. I don't experience things like you do. And when you say Osita, when you say that if I'm happy with the current situation, I don't know. I'm not opposed to it. I'm content with it. Yes. That okay. I don't. That's one less stress in my life. You know, education, work, career. That's everything else is well enough. But now having to process emotions like everyone else. Like for example, by emotions, I generally mean towards sadness and that kind of stuff. It doesn't really bother me. Fear, again, it doesn't really. I don't necessarily fear anything. Happiness, if you consider the technical definition of it, um, I guess I'll laugh at jokes if you throw something at me. If I find something funny, I'll laugh at it. When some people fall, I laugh. That's just a natural reaction to it. But if you mean content, yeah, I am content of not having to go through the heartbreak, the suffering of losing people, the terms of regret, of missing out on something. Okay, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. I didn't get the scholarship. I didn't get it. I'm not gonna let it affect me and my future decisions based off of that one thing. So that's my thought process.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, thanks
I
for
mean,
prying,
it's
Osita.
fair. It's fair.
Joking.
I will say this. I think that you are still just getting used to kind of like feel at your own pace. That's what I'm feeling. Like I feel like you want to do it, but you just want to do it in a way that you feel comfortable at your own pace, and eventually you will get there whenever you feel like you need to have that skill more set. I mean, at least the way I see it is like right now you're trying to just get things done, and you may feel like having emotions can make it harder. So you just, I guess, being practical. Um, but I mean, I trust that you're being well guided into your emotional journey. But okay, we don't have anything else in the queue, so essentially we can start like wrapping up. So again, thank you so much for everyone who came and even those who already left. It was fun. It was nice. And until next week, we don't have a topic yet set for next week, but we're gonna let you know through emails. And if you feel like you have some specific topic that you want to mention, feel free to reach out and we can certainly explore it since we are in the free team session during the summer. All right, so I'm gonna cut the recording and check us out on every social media possible.
Think about it.
All
Social
right,
media.
bye bye.